2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brandon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. How do I handle my partner with love when they treat me like I'm a monster? Welcome to the Real Talk Recovery Podcast with the Therapy Brothers.
We're brothers, we're therapists, and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery. How do I handle my partner with love when they treat me like I'm a monster?
All right, this is going to be, this is a hard one, a difficult one to do. And I think it'll lead into a lot of different discussions. So I'm really excited for it, Tyler. I think it will be good. So how you been, Tyler? How are things?
Things are great in my world. Brandon, we got my daughter finally squared away up at college. She got to run in her first cross-country meet, and that was fun to see. And other than that, life is good, man. I'm glad to be here with you. It's like my highlight of my week to just come and talk to my brother.
Oh, hey, man, I appreciate that. You're the man. Tyler always jokes that he's my sidekick, and there's nothing further from the truth. It's the opposite.
It was actually funny just yesterday, Brandon. It was the big thing for the BYU Utah football game the last week. And last night we got like some random message from one of our old friends who we used to like fight with as kids when it was BYU Utah week. And it brought back all sorts of memories of those days where we were just running the neighborhood. And for some reason we were so passionate about who was going to win that football game.
That's good times. We had a great childhood.
Yeah, we really did.
It was nice and comfortable growing up in your shadow.
Awesome. Well, think about what it's like for me to be in your shadow now as a grown man.
Whatever. All right, enough of this. We got an important question to get to, and we got Jeff here with us, and really appreciate Jeff's vulnerability and willingness to come on to ask a really hard question, and we're going to break down every part of this question. So, Jeff, welcome to the show. If you would just give us a little bit of background, kind of tell us what's going on, and then ask away.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've been in recovery for about 2 years, and went through still going through a pretty heated divorce. And I listened to your podcast on masculinity a few weeks ago and reached out because I feel it's important to kind of showcase this little cottage industry of groups or coaches or therapists that are, kind of keeping women in victimhood and almost, squashing masculinity in general. Everything becomes toxic masculinity, and you can't stand on your own 2 feet. And I came to the realization when I moved out again for the second time that I should have never moved back in. And it came to the point where my wife was the last bad habit I had to kick, because I couldn't get away from the toxic relationship part of what we had created and what it had become. And in the process of that, I noticed that she was starting to use my kid as a weapon, which for me was super hard because, I feel like I was the present parent most of our marriage. I was the one that got him up for school. I was the one that made him every meal. I was the one that went to every event. I never missed a thing. And for her to start kind of taking away my access to him, it hurt a lot. So I've been suffering because of these folks that she's been with. They kind of coach what to do and what happens next. And it's been tough because, I can't have a relationship with my child now. I've seen him in the past few days since I reached out to you. I got to attend his first day of school, but that was the first time I'd seen him or even talked to him in 3 months. And that was super tough. We actually got to do a therapy session together last week. And it was frustrating, but super rewarding at the same time. So maybe I'll stop there and you guys can ask some questions.
First, Jeff, I just want to say, man, it sounds like there's a lot of pain all the way around in your situation. I can imagine that your ex is probably experiencing a ton of pain. You're definitely feeling a lot of pain. It sounds like the biggest concern for you right now is that you're having your relationship with your son also sort of be pulled into and affected by this. And so if I'm hearing you right, you're basically saying, how do I handle being able to try to navigate seeing my son and managing this relationship while still going through the divorce proceedings that I've got to go through and dealing with my ex-wife in a way that I'm not going to lose my own value system.
Right. And the tough thing about this situation is, it happens a lot with parental alienation is you feel like no matter what choice you make, it's going to be the wrong one. You're trying to keep your nose clean while at the same time trying to stand in your values and your ground. But it's hard because, if you make a decision, it's probably going to be used against you and your son is going to suffer more.
So it's, Jeff, this is hard for me to say, but it's just a truth that we all know, which is, and we see it in divorce all the time, is when one person really plays that victim stance to another in a relationship that's falling apart, a natural reaction is for the other person to then play the victim to them, right? And then you have two victims, and then it's a race to the bottom, and the collateral damage is the children. And so it's really hard when you're being made out to be a monster, when your partner's playing the victim to you, when they're getting supported by other people saying what a monster you are, to not play the victim to them, to not turn them into a monster. So how do you stand in your truths and be a boundaried person and be honest in this relationship, but also, and this is the hard part, also have some compassion for her? I'll also try to see her humanity and see her struggle. Is that possible in this situation?
Are you asking me or Tyler?
I think he was asking. He was asking
I'm
you,
asking
Jeff.
you, Jeff.
Okay. I think it's possible. I mean, I tried to kind of separate her victimhood or what she's claiming to be victimhood from her. You know, she's still my son's mom. She's actually a fantastic person. I wish her happiness as she moves forward in life. But at the same time, I can't ignore what she's doing. And
Yeah.
you know, last week, I had this, my court case got a hearing in front of the judge, and the attorneys were talking, and I guess my wife's attorney brought her to the court even though she was not able to attend. It was supposed to be for attorneys and the judge only. And, I think that was a ploy to kind of make her look like the sad woman that's, been victimized by this man, and she wants all the money. And the judge flat out told them that, what they are asking for is not possible. He would never rule on anything like that. And then he made a special note to come out and talk about what's being done to my son and the relationship there. But, the big problem there is I can't really file anything in court because he turns 18 in 3 months, So by the time it got in front of a judge, he's an adult. It doesn't matter, So, and then I flip over to the therapy session I had with him, which was absolutely amazing because I have refused to not be a part of my son's life. So every school event I still show up to. The first day of school, before the first day of school, I dropped a gift package off to him. On Father's Day, I made it a point to go to his work, and I gave him a bunch of gifts to see him on Father's Day. So I have made it a point to not quit being a dad, and I refuse to just walk away, Good. So that has created some tough situations at the same time. But, in that therapy session, it was interesting because it wasn't really my son talking. It was my wife's fear stories coming out one by one. And I could almost quote them verbally by text and email of what she said to me. And that was super disappointing because if you look up the definition of parental alienation, it's actually child abuse. And it's super disheartening to go through that.
Jeff, what are some of those fear stories that are being kind of spoken? And what are some of those stories?
Well, let's see. So you've ruined everything. Man up. You're not a man if you don't give mom the house. Are you going to help me with college or not? I expect you to help me with college, which is a big thing that his mom has mentioned. He actually brought up my therapy, which was interesting. He didn't know the name of it, but, I go to Therapy Utah. And he said,
which is a great place, by the way.
I fully agree. So it was very interesting because he first he calls it the wrong name, and then he says, they're not going to help you. We tried to help you, and you wouldn't take it. And I'm sitting over here in the chair going, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm in recovery. I'm pursuing my life, and I'm embracing my life and learning how to dance for the first time in 20 years. It's amazing. So it's tough when I hear him just list off all of these things. He even mentioned betrayal for him, and I was just like, oh my goodness,
So you're hearing this language. How you say that your wife went to some groups and group systems, and in what ways, like, has it perpetuated that victim story? What did you see? What did you experience?
Yeah, so originally she got hooked up with them, and they have no professional therapists on staff. They're all just trained coaches.
Yep.
Which means they took a 6-hour weekend course and they're ready to go. And I worked with them. I worked with her coach as part of my disclosure. What I didn't know, and part of that disclosure, is that it didn't feel good. I was asked to give up all my masculinity, to say yes to everything because I had no ground to stand on. And then lo and behold, on the other side of my disclosure, I didn't know that even though I absolutely did not consent to being recorded, it was recorded. And then,
oh, wow.
And then the coach actually offered to give a copy of that recording and a transcript to my wife's attorney, which
Wow.
is in all kind of violation of a lot of things, and it just breaks down the relationship of trust that you're supposed to have with a therapist. But I noticed immediately as she got involved with this coach and these groups that it wasn't about recovery at all. It was about, here's what he's going to do next. And it was always amped up into, first he's going to pull the money away, and then he's going to leave. And then you're going to do this, and he's going to escalate to this. And pretty soon it came down to, I would no longer go near the home because I feel like I was being entrapped, and they were trying to coach her into getting restraining orders. And, she has barricaded the door because she fully believes that I'm going to come over and hurt them. And I'm like, I want no part of that. At no time has that ever happened in our marriage.
You're so far from that.
Yeah, I'm going to unplug and completely go away because I just can't deal with that. I'm not going to participate in it. So that's kind of what I experienced, and it was shocking.
Why do you think, Jeff, she kept going to these groups and meeting with these coaches? And
because of the validation she got. I mean, it just kept her spinning in her fear stories and her victimhood. And I tried to talk about, how she was stuck in that fear cycle and different things from some of the tools that I've learned. And I'm trying to help her get out of that. And the crazy thing is, this specific group that she was working with, they had an answer to every one of those questions. So they would flip it around. He's going to say you should get out of the fear cycle. He's going to say that you're stuck in a drama triangle. He's going to
that you're gaslighting all the time, right?
Exactly.
And you're abusing, you're gaslighting,
yeah. And it was super tough because I'm sitting here going, that's not what I'm doing at all.
Right.
And I frankly haven't talked about this in quite a while, just because I did some EMDR sessions, and I got some peace around the trauma that I had experienced with disclosure and going through this process. And man, it was tough. It was really tough. So now I'm moving on and trying to figure out how to rebuild that relationship with my son.
Yeah.
Man, Jeff, there's so many layers to this. And I think, you're illustrating some of those things that, it makes my heart hurt to think about the process that you guys have been in that's already really difficult and really hard. And then you've had to sift through some of this other stuff that's made it even harder. Something that's going through my mind. Go ahead, Brandon. You gonna say something?
No, I didn't have anything.
Okay, go. Something that's going through my mind here is all of those things that you just said. All the things that they said, you're doing this, or you outlined a few things. You've ruined everything. You need help with college. You need to make amends for this or that or the other. I know that you've probably done all of this stuff, but one of the suggestions and thoughts towards your continued freedom is to actually ask yourself, and this is really hard, it takes a lot of emotional maturity, but is there a kernel of truth in anything my son is saying to me? Now you're hearing it and saying, okay, these are word for word verbatim texts that I've gotten from my wife. Like, he's obviously getting messaging from her because she's in pain. You said earlier that you truly hope that she'll get better and that you love her and that she's a good woman. Is there any piece of truth in any of the things that your son said to you?
Absolutely. I think during our therapy session last week, he talked about, growing up and things were a little bit hard in some moments. We would get mad and we would get fights and different things there. And frankly, and I didn't know this before, but because of some of the childhood trauma and things that I experienced that I had never told anyone before my disclosure, I had a permanent chip on my shoulder. I was angry. I was mad. I was inconvenienced by everyone in the world. And, I was pretty chill most of the time, but, I would bring out the archives if something offended me, because I would never say anything about all the things the past 6 months. So, through this process, I've learned how to, express my emotions and not stuff things down, which was part of my family dynamic. But, I listened to my child sit there and talk about that, and I didn't deny anything that he said, because that's his version of truth. You know, he's experiencing, that's what his hurt is. And I just said, you know what, Jake, I take responsibility for all that, and I'm sorry. And he just kind of softened up after that. And it was good to see that, like, it actually impacted him for me to take responsibility for the things that I've done over the years. You know, it's not always a one-sided story. Sure, everybody has, you know, bits and pieces where they don't show up right. And they would love to change that in the past, but all you can do is move forward.
That's okay, good. So that's a beautiful kind of example of the point that I'm trying to make for some of our listeners who might be hearing this too, is that too often it's going to be an all or nothing. So it's like he comes to you and says, you've ruined everything. You need to help with college. You need to do this. You need to do that. And it's going to be either all like, oh, you're right, I'm so sorry, like, let me fix everything. Or it's going to be like, no. And then you're going to prove her and all the groups that she's been in right. And you're going to go control all the money, and you're going to starve them out, and you're going to disappear, and everything's going to be exactly as they said it would be. Or you find the middle path, which is, these are the things that I legitimately really want to take ownership for. And I want to apologize to you, son. And it wouldn't be wise if I went and used all of our financial resource this way, because we're going to have 2 households now that we're going to have to manage. And so we're going to have to figure that out as we go. There has to be a middle ground. And that's where Brandon was alluding to boundaries earlier, is the best boundaries are going to come when your heart is at peace towards your son and towards your ex, and where you can take accountability for your part and still stand in the principles that are true and right for you. But now it's going to come from a place of, geez, I really want to help things go right, instead of like, I'm angry and I'm bitter and I'm going to be the one that's playing the victim now too.
Yeah. I think, Jeff, it's interesting listening to you. And I have a lot coming up inside of me. Like, I could really go off right now. And I'm debating whether I should or not. But
I actually listened to that podcast on masculinity, and I was like, "Go off, Brandon, do it."
Do I need to poke the bear a little bit more, Brandon, or should we let it lie a little bit longer?
Well, here's the deal. It doesn't help for me to come off as angry and bitter, but what does help is to call a spade when it comes to people who are out there destroying families. And Jeff, I'm not saying that your shit doesn't stink, because it probably does some, right? And I'm not saying like we're on Team Jeff and he's a victim here to this whole thing. That's not what I'm saying. But what has not happened with the help that she's gotten and that you've gotten is actual healing work, is actual working toward some compassion, some love, some acceptance, some forgiveness. And I would love to have your wife on as a guest too, because she'd probably say things like, you guys, you're not getting the full picture. And you guys, like, you have no idea, you know, and we'd probably get a lot of that victim story, right?
Well, and some of it would be valid.
Yeah. But this is what really pisses me off. Professing yourself to be experts and your life coaches who have very minimal training. Showing up on a podcast and a platform and not even being able to use your real name as the host of that platform, because you can't be vulnerable. Demonizing and villainizing people so you don't even look at them as human beings. That's a problem. And it's a problem with this whole the reason I'd like to have your wife on, because I'd like to really dig down to how she's truly feeling. There's probably part of her that doesn't want to be angry and where she's at. There's probably a deep part of her that doesn't want to be the victim and wants to figure out how not to be that and still feel like she's protected and being able to move forward in her life. My guess is that she's probably feeling pretty stuck. And so it is a problem when you profess to be an expert. You create. I have a hard time even calling it therapy, but I'll call it this for just for the point. Therapy-induced trauma. Okay, your disclosure, Jeff, is a therapy-induced trauma. You had to do EMDR about the help that you got.
Yeah, it was tough.
That's not okay. That's not okay. Right. All right. I am going off now. The point, the point here is it's really hard, Jeff, when you feel like you're not only battling um the issues with your wife, but she's got a whole system of supposed experts behind her that are telling her what she should and shouldn't do, right? And it kind of leaves you with not much leg to stand on, and you have to hunker down even harder and more firmly. I don't know how did you just go 3 months without seeing your son? Was that his choice?
So she filed for divorce, and that day she blocked my phone number, and that day my son blocked my phone number. So the only way I
Okay.
could communicate with them was through email. And I asked what was going on, and I was told that Jake no longer wanted to talk to me, and I was like, "Why?" You know. And let me add a little bit from what you just said there, Brandon. I think, I do want to make a stand. I loved my wife. I still love her to this day. I wish her all the happiness in the world, but she is stuck, and that makes me sad for her, you know, um, because she can't get out of those fear stories that have been created. Um, it's just disheartening because I see it expressed onto my son, and I see that I'm moving on and I'm finding happiness and I'm enjoying life, and I'm no longer trying to exhibit codependent behaviors and caretaking and all those things that I gave up for 20 plus years in marriage. Gosh, I'm getting out and I'm mountain biking, and I sold barbecue commercially for the first time yesterday. It was amazing. And I had food left over, so I sent a peace offering to my son, and he had the best dinner ever. So these are things that are real, and as I'm finding myself and my life and the joys in my life, it's amazing, and I wish she could have that, but she doesn't. She's stuck, and it's just sad.
Yeah.
I can hear some actual genuine emotion in your voice there, Jeff. The kind of emotion that as a therapist I would look for to see that your heart's actually at peace, that there isn't anger there, that there's actual some sadness and some devastation and some of your own grief and loss there too.
Yeah.
And I think if you could tap into that part of your way of being, it's going to help you as you continue to make the decisions you're making. And the decisions you're making are good ones there. It's like, okay, I am limited on the ability to see my son, but I sent the peace offering of the food that I just made. And I went to a therapy session, and I'm showing up where and when I can. And it sounds to me like you're in touch with the values of what it means to be a father. At least you're trying to live those things the best you can right now. And at the end of the day, that's the place you have to start, is what you have control over to keep your own values intact.
But there's a hard reality here. That is, you don't have control over her. So you can't tell her to stop going to those groups, or tell her to handle the divorce differently, or she's going to do her, right? And so that comes back to you taking accountability for you as a man, checking out your integrity and saying, how do I handle this in my integrity? And really being self-reflective and making sure that you got that in alignment. And I think it can get really hard to do that when you feel manipulated and attacked and things like that. It's hard not to take a shot back, but it's not the right thing to do. But to be grounded in your values and your boundaries is important right now, even if she hates you for it.
Yeah.
You've got to stand firm in those things and get support yourself in order to be able to do that.
I agree. And I found it interesting because we did some court mediation to try and settle the divorce, and I used to get spun up like big time. I'd get angry about the things that she would say and do. And during that mediation, I was finally able to, in real time, disconnect from that story, because that's not my story, you know? And I have my story, and just because I'm not doing caretaking and exhibiting codependence and doing what she wants me to do, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, you know? And then on top of that, you know, one of the most hurtful things was, you know, she kept claiming that I was a bad father and I wasn't there for my son. But in reality, that's not my story either. I've completely disconnected from that because nobody can claim that I wasn't a good father. And I was always there for my son, no matter what. And I still am today. And I refuse to stop being his dad. You know, I think that was kind of a funny moment in the therapy session because, you know, he's telling me, he's like, Dad, the emails that you send me every day are kind of annoying. And I'm like, well, Jake, if you would let me text or call you, I'd probably not get an email every day. I said, the one thing I'm not going to quit being is your dad, Jake, like ever. So get used to it, buddy, you know? So.
But Jeff, I want to give you maybe, and I don't know all the ins and outs. Is he the only child that you guys have together?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's this thing that you want him to know that I'm going to fight for you. Like I'm going to be there. I'm going to be your dad. I'm going to fight for you. And I'm going to allow you to hate me if you want to hate me. I'm going to give you space to process what you need to process. And it's a really hard thing as a dad because you know that he might be being fed lies about you. But for you to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to surrender that and let some of that come out in the wash. You know, he's a 17-year-old, almost 18-year-old. As he grows, as he matures, maybe he'll look at this and see things in the future. So it's kind of that balance between, hey, I'm here, and you know what, I'll respect you with how much space you need, right?
Sure. I think, you know, I think at first I was like asking him when I could see him next almost every email. But then I got to the point where, you know what, I'm just going to live my life and invite him along. You know, I have my journey. I'm creating that journey and I'm going to go on a trip. Hey, Jake, you want to come? You know?
Yeah.
Those types of things. Instead of, Jake, man, I really miss you. I want to see you. It's, Jake, I'm going mountain biking. Let's go. You know? So I think that's where I want to focus my efforts because I want him to see that I am happy, that I am living my life, that I am healthy, because I think that'll pay off in spades. You know,
A father doesn't need to consume his son for his self-worth. A
Agreed.
father loves his son where he's at and supports him and lets him know, like, hey, I'm always here. I love you and you can be where you're at. You can be angry at me, you can be whatever. And I'll be here and I'll be here with a plate of barbecue ready for you when you're ready to talk, right?
Yes.
But Brandon, you said a very key element here about that idea of consuming our children versus being there to offer our strength. And when you're in that victim place yourself, when you're wrangling with your ex, when all that stuff is going on, it's really easy to cross that line into then I'm going to do my part of the triangling with my son too. And I'm going to try to get my time and my attention and I'm going to fill my void by having him love me again. And it's like, no, I really am going to offer my strength. It's okay. It's okay. The truth is that if you look at it from the long game perspective, I see this happen all the time with my clients. I've got a client right now. He's kind of in a very, very similar situation to yours where he's been out of the house now for about 6 months. They're going through a pretty ugly divorce and son doesn't want anything to do with him, but he's been willing to go to have lunch or coffee once a week with his dad. And dad says, I'm there with bells on. We talk. I let him talk about whatever he wants. I'm there to support him. At the end of the day, that's all I can do. That's awesome work by that dad. Because now he's not running around and going like, well, yeah, but when am I going to see you again? Or like, I deserve so much time with you, this and that and the other. It's like, hey, son, I'm here and I'll be available and I'm going to love you no matter what. And it's okay because in the long run, when you can never go wrong long term by living a wholehearted life. So if you live your wholehearted life, you're going to attract all of those things that you want, including your relationship with your son. He's going to be attracted to that wholehearted life. He won't be attracted to you playing small. And that's the work, is to avoid playing small.
Yeah, I agree. I think, what comes to mind there is when things first started to go downhill. And I realized I did have a problem. I did have an addiction. But the biggest thing that came out of that was I didn't know who I was. I didn't have my own identity. And I realized the first time I moved out that my kid was my identity, and
Yeah.
I had to unplug from that. It was tough. I mean, and then to have it really happen through parental alienation on top of that, I almost had to mourn my son. And but it has made me a stronger man today because, even though I grew up in an enmeshed family and unhealthy situations and kind of learned some of those patterns, I don't have to keep that cycle or chain going. I can break it right now and exhibit healthy behaviors and encourage my son to do the same in the future.
Mm-hmm. Love it. See, you're recognizing that enmeshment, that shame, that the things that are causing that unhealthiness with your son, and it's funny to me. God gives us exactly what we need, and I hate to say this to you, parental alienation is never okay, but maybe that's what you needed, Jeff, to be
I've
like,
often thought about that. I really have.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't need it in the future. Hopefully you learn that healthy attachment because of that, right? But yeah, it sounds like you're taking these challenges and you're actually learning and shifting in them, which is good.
I am trying. I mean, I have a practice every day where I'm trying to assimilate new information and honestly, it's sad to see that that Kobe and Ashland split up and the Betrayed Addicted Expert podcast ended. But honestly, we now have 3 podcasts instead of 1. So there's a lot more information to assimilate and awesome healthy practices and behaviors to find out about.
Right. All right, Jeff. Do you have any last questions for us?
I don't think I do. I mean, I just wanted kind of to echo, that we can find happiness and we can move on and heal, and we don't need to stay in that victim status because, my wife's stuck there, but I was stuck there for a while too. I played small, just like Tyler said, and that's not healthy. We can move on for sure,
Well,
and definitely find happiness.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, getting divorced finalized does not all of a sudden get you out of that victim stuck place.
Agreed.
You can stay in that for the rest of your life, toward other people. And it really gets down to it being a choice of yours to say, okay, it's time to let things go and not carry around this toxic energy anymore. So Tyler, any last thoughts for you?
No, I was just going to say to you, Jeff, thank you again for coming on and sharing parts of your story. I imagine that some of the people listening right now are having a real interesting dialectic of emotion, where part of the people are going, man, this is really hitting home. This feels really like it's hitting a nerve for me. And then there's other people that are going to be pushing against it a little bit, going man, this isn't the kind of stuff that I typically hear a therapist talk about with somebody. And I just want to point out that the middle ground that we're getting at is that whether it's with you or with your ex-wife, that the healing is the process of doing the grieving of things as you thought they were or should have been, and coming to a place of acceptance of things as they are, and then making a choice from the individual place of creating and working towards the life that I want to be living based on my values instead of waiting for the other person. And that's at the key here. That's the key principle here that I think we're talking about. So go ahead,
Agreed.
Jeff.
I love it.
I got a last question for you, Jeff. Where do we find your barbecue?
Or right now I'm just doing it at the bike park on a couple of event days, but I actually
Nice.
I don't know, for the past year, I have people show up at my door and they're like, I need barbecue. And I just hand them pans of meat. So,
wow, you sound like a great neighbor.
I have quite a little following. Well, they of course have to pay for the meat, but
Right.
it's been fun to kind of step into that because I do love to cook, and the more I get into it, it was interesting yesterday to watch people. They'd get a plate of food and then they'd take a bite and their faces would just light up, and I'm just like, that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. Love it. I want to say before we wrap this up, if you want more context to this episode, then listen to our episode that we talked about, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, about boundaries. It will give you context to a lot of what we've talked about today. Because if you haven't listened to that and you listen to this, you might be thinking, what are they really talking about? So go back, listen to that, and you'll understand this episode even better. So Jeff, I appreciate your courage, your willingness to come on to talk about things. And if anyone's found this helpful, please like this episode and share it. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, guys.